Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Derek Douglas, and I'm the Vice President for Civic Engagement and External Affairs at the university. Tonight, we look forward to sharing with you the university's plans that we've put in place to contribute to a successful, healthy, and safe return to campus. We know that there's great interest in the community and local residents around the university's reopening, and we believe the plans that we will share tonight will help to inform you of the efforts the university has taken to keep the community safe. You'll hear from a variety of university leaders, each who plays a different role at the university. They'll be sharing campus safety protocols, as well as lessons learned from other higher education institutions have influenced our planning. We will also highlight key metrics that will be monitored and shared publicly, and will describe how community programs have been and will be adapted to operate in this new environment. In addition to the work that was taking place to organize the campus reopening, there was also a work group on community programs and engagement planning that was created to analyze how the new guidelines and timelines for the return of university personnel will affect the university's community-facing programs and community engagement. This work helped to inform and instruct the broader university campus reopening plans that we'll hear about tonight. The university's goal in returning to campus is to sustain our approach to education, research, and intellectual life at the university, while at the same time prioritizing the health of the members of our shared community. We place a great value and importance on in-person engagement to building intellectual and social communities, but we recognize that in this age, safety and proper protocols are of the utmost importance to make sure that everybody is safe. This Sunday, students will begin moving in and returning to campus. And so we wanted to make sure we had this update briefing for the community prior to that occurring. At the end of the session, I will be doing question and answer based on questions that were submitted from the community prior to tonight's session. We also will be recording tonight's session, so if people missed it, it will be available on our website, and I'll provide more details about that later on. The first speaker we have tonight will be the University of Chicago's Provost, Kai Lee, and it is my privilege to introduce her now.
Good evening. It's great to be here with you today to share more about our plans to address the safety and health of our campus and the broader community as we return to campus for the autumn quarter. As Derek said, our move-in for our students will start this Sunday, but over the next couple of weeks, students will be moving in to the campus and surrounding area. The university preparation for the start of the academic year has been guided by our academic values while relying extensively on public health guidance from experts at the University of Chicago Medicine and from public health agencies at the federal, state, and local levels. We decided it was important to provide opportunities for in-person engagement because our university's culture of vigorous inquiry and education is built on engagement. We want as many students as possible to have the intellectual and social experiences that are unique to campus life, while continuing to follow all appropriate public health guidelines, including social distancing and face masking. While we are returning to campus, we are not returning to life as usual. As you'll hear more about today, every member of the university community will be expected to adhere to the University of Chicago Health Pact, which outlines our shared responsibility to each other and the actions we should take as individuals to address the health and safety, not only of our own community, but also the Southside community in which we reside. We are proud to be part of the Southside and want to do everything we can to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. To capture this commitment, we are launching a new campaign with the theme, "Because we're all in this together." The statement is a reflection of our values, and you'll see it features across university channels, from posters and figures like the gargoyle to website and social media. We have literally spent months planning for the resumption of some in-person classes and activities in close collaboration with epidemiologists at the University of Chicago Medical Center, and taking notes also of what's happening in our city, as well as universities and colleges across the country. As you may have noticed, over the past several months, we have gradually increased the number of people on campus with a focus on essential activities. This has given us an opportunity to test and refine our policies and procedures. A key part of our planning has been learning from peer institutions. I'm sure you've heard of the not so positive stories. Campuses where excessive social gathering or lack of adherence to policies has resulted in the spike in cases. But that alone does not tell the whole story. We are also seeing institutions that have brought people back and maintained a low number of cases. And we are focused on learning from those examples and implementing best practices. For example, Yale's publicly shared data are encouraging, with only a handful of positive results out of thousands of tests. At Duke, 95% of undergraduates and 75% of community members have signed the compact around safety and health, and they continue to see overall high compliance. Over months of planning, the team at UChicago has pressure tested and validated our plans while also planning for contingencies. We have a resilience action team representing 18 critical functions that meets daily to monitor activities and is positioned to respond in real time. For the autumn quarter, more than 70% of college students and graduate students have indicated they intend to return to campus for the fall, though I should note that many have remained around campus during the past 6 months. We are resuming some in-person classes while continuing to deliver most classes remotely or through dual modality. Roughly a quarter of classes will have an in-person component, and we expect nearly 40% of students to have an in-person or blended experience. A number of precautions are being taken for the classroom. On-campus housing capacity will be down by about half to facilitate COVID-19 related protocols. Most staff will continue to work remotely, decreasing on-campus density. Over the summer, lab-based research ramped up to 50%, which means all researchers have access to their labs but work in staggered shifts. We expect labs to continue to operate at this level, and results so far have been encouraging. Similarly, non-lab-based research has also resumed over the summer. Overall, we saw a low number of cases, which is a positive sign for this approach. We realize that the situation remains fluid, and we would likely need to take adjustment along the process. I want to stress that we are committed to prioritizing safety and health while advancing our academic mission. And we ask in advance for your understanding, should there be a need to adjust our plans. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Emily Landon to share an update on the state of the virus in Illinois, university mitigation efforts, and availability of community testing. Dr. Landon?
Thank you, Provost Lee. Good evening, everybody in Hyde Park. It's great to be here tonight. I've been so honored to be a part of this really great process. And I want to talk a little bit today about the health risks and all of the things that are being done to protect everyone on the campus and off the campus. You know, Chicago, I have to say, is holding its own. we had a tough time with this pandemic early on, and the state of Illinois has bounced up and down, but the aggressive actions that our government has taken throughout this process have been forward thinking and smart, and have helped protect us from the worst of times that other communities have suffered through. Today, Chicago is doing better than the rest of the state of Illinois, and Hyde Park specifically has only a 3.2% positivity rate that's coming down. While there were 2,000 cases in all of Illinois, very few in Hyde Park. And our caseload at the University of Chicago Medicine was at one time the highest in the state, is now down less than 15 patients inpatient, as low as we've been since March, the beginning of March, which should be really reassuring to everyone. But at the same time, we know that those numbers and that work, that low transmission rate in Hyde Park is not the same across the country. And we have worked hard to earn that excellent transmission rate. We know that many of these students are going to be joining us from all over the country. Of course, some of them have been living in Hyde Park all along and are part of our community and understand how we do things in our culture in Illinois, in Chicago, and in Hyde Park. But what about everyone coming from everywhere else? There have been so many messages in the news that are contradictory and confusing and have led people to have really different cultures about reacting to COVID here compared to other places. How are we going to ensure that we instill our values with the people that'll be joining us in Hyde Park? Well, this is really important and probably the most important piece of what's going to happen. First of all, instead of relying on tests that we don't know where they were done, when they were done, or how they were done, before people come to campus, we're inviting everyone who is feeling well, who does not have symptoms of COVID, to come join us. We're going to test them before they even walk in the door of their dorm. They'll be tested, have their sample sent, be moving in on a staggered schedule, as I think you've heard, and with very much social distancing and very short time periods. Then they're going to be in a stay-at-home order, similar to the way things were in March for everyone. Those coming from the highest risk states will be legit quarantined in the way that they won't even be able to leave for food. We'll be bringing their meals to them. Everyone else will only really be able to leave for short periods of time to take walks and to get their meals in grab-to-go fashion and come back to their dorm for at least a week. That gives us time to make sure that anyone who is bringing COVID back to campus is going to be alone and unable to spread it, and we'll be testing them regularly to make sure that everything goes well. This is essential for us to make sure that these cases don't spread wildly through our community, which has happened, I know, in some college campuses. Nonetheless, we also know that it's going to help them understand what is expected of them and what will need to happen as part of our campus and our community. There are no masks that are perfect enough to protect everyone from COVID all the time. There's no distance that you can keep all the time. There's no way to keep every surface completely clean. There's no way to test frequently enough to prevent anyone from getting COVID. The one thing that we can do is to do everything. Because when we layer these interventions together, they create the kind of safety blanket that we need to protect our communities and our students. It's so important that we don't just focus on testing or just on masking or just on the fact that all of our people living on campus will be living in single rooms and not sharing rooms. It's not just about making sure that when they take their masks off for dining, they have plenty of distance between them. It's about doing all of these things so that if there's a time when someone's mask comes off inadvertently or when they have to get closer to someone walking next to them on the sidewalk, that we have so many layers of protection in place that there isn't an opportunity for transmission. That's what we've been doing in Illinois since the beginning and what you've been doing in Hyde Park, and it's what we're going to help our students coming in to understand that we need to do. That means cleaning of surfaces regularly on the campus, making sure that things are disinfected on a regular basis, easy access to hand sanitizers, tons of signage reminding people about the masks and the distance and the washing of your hands. We're going to be testing everyone who lives on campus every week. We're also going to be offering a voluntary testing program for anyone else, including faculty and staff that work at the university and off-campus students, to be tested regularly to make sure that so that we can better understand what's happening in the community. We also have our own robust contact tracing program, because while the city is really ramping things up and doing a good job in some areas, we need to make absolutely sure that every single positive test is followed up really quickly with phone calls and the ability to quarantine individuals who may have been exposed to that person. And when there are exposures that happen to people in the community, we'll be communicating those to the public health department so that they can reach out to our community partners, people like you, if you might have had contact with someone that had COVID. We also have maximized ventilation on our campus, because we don't need any extra spread because of poor ventilation in older buildings. And some of our rooms just aren't fit to be used. You've already heard about how we're de-densifying everywhere and making sure that students are not crammed together. We also have gathering limits for the students, and those will be enforced. And we know that there will still be cases. And that's why we have great plans and rules for how we're doing quarantine and isolation. Our contact tracing team checks in regularly to make sure people are following the rules, and there's isolation housing, so we'll hopefully not see spread across our dorms. Make no mistake, this is going to be a tough challenge for everyone. There is no tried and true roadmap for how to open a campus during a pandemic. But this age group of individuals, 18 to 29-year-olds, has been driving the pandemic across the country. The good news is that here in Illinois and in Hyde Park, we're not seeing that transmit to any of our older and possibly more sensitive individuals that live here. We're aiming to keep that the same by keeping track of the information, knowing that this is a dynamic situation, and watching what other campuses do. We've created a plan here that is tailor-made for the culture, the climate, and the community that University of Chicago is in. It is a bespoke design, as is any going back to school plan these days. But we know that we can also take all of the evidence that we gather from anywhere else in order to help us do the best job that we can. And you should expect that we will have to change and adapt. In fact, what we start out today as a plan is just a snapshot in time of an evolving plan that has been changing and growing as we learn more about this pandemic, and it will continue to do so as we monitor everything at hundreds of metrics on a regular basis to make sure that we are giving everyone the best chance for health. People are going to be quarantined and isolated. There will be cases, and it's going to be challenging for the students on our campus to adjust to life in college without the things that they used to have. But we're committed to making sure that they have other opportunities for socialization and good help understanding what to do, not just what they can't do, but what is a good idea and how to socialize in a pandemic. We know that this will be a challenge, but we've never backed down from a challenge before, and we know that you don't either. We hope that this is a fruitful and good arrangement that brings many, many people back to our communities that we're used to having, but does so in a way that's safe and honors and respects the values and the health of everyone. Next, I'd like to introduce someone who could talk a lot more about how things are going to look on a day-to-day basis for these students, the Dean of Students for the University of Chicago, Michele Rasmussen.
Thank you so much, Emily. Good evening, everyone. As Dean of Students in the university, it is my responsibility and the responsibility of all the wonderful people I work with to attend to the quality of student life on campus. You've already heard from both Provost Lee and Dr. Landon about the UChicago Health Pact, which is a community agreement of sorts that we're asking every member of our campus community to sign on to, metaphorically, and follow the tenets which are so important to maintaining health and safety, not just for those of us at the University of Chicago, but for all of our friends and neighbors on the South Side. We're going to be really reinforcing the messaging and the key components of the UChicago Health Pact for all of our students, whether they're living on campus or off campus in the year ahead. There'll be lots of ambient reminders of the importance of wearing your face covering, of social distancing, of proper hand hygiene, of proper behavior in classrooms, campus buildings, and the community. They'll see evidence of this in flyers, in online messages, and in fact, in the behavior of everyone around them. We really want to emphasize and really make sure that they integrate into their daily life this whole concept of we're all in this together, and that individual actions impact those of others. So even though this age group may not themselves be on average vulnerable to COVID-19, the people around them are. And we really want our students to understand the importance of personal responsibility in that respect. You've already heard some highlights of our plan for housing and residential dining on campus. I just want to highlight that we will be operating at a greatly de-densified number in terms of our residential students. Less than 50% of our capacity in our residence halls will be occupied this quarter. And that's deliberate and planful, because we want to make sure that every student has their own unique single room, that a limited number of students are assigned to communal bathrooms, and that in our dining halls, we have very few students in close proximity to minimize exposure and spread of COVID-19. We have also thinking about our off-campus students, because as many of you know, a large number of UChicago undergraduate and all of our graduate students live off campus and are part of the community. We want to make sure that should they be exposed or test positive for COVID-19, they receive the same medical attention from UChicago Student Wellness as our on-campus population. They'll be checked up on, and there'll be provisions made to ensure that they have everything they need for the period of time they have to quarantine or isolate. We're not going to leave them to their own devices. We're going to provide them with lots of support through our medical teams and also through their own deans of students on campus. I'm also pleased to let you know that students are really great at watching out for one another, and I fully anticipate that our student government and other student leaders will find ways to support their fellow students both on and off campus as the need arises. We're also making it very clear that our expectations for students' behavior on and off campus is really important. I've talked about the UChicago Health Pact, but we've also made sure that students understand that while we want to give them the benefit of the doubt if they make mistakes, if they forget to wear their mask, or if they're perhaps not social distancing as they should be, or if they're engaging in off-campus gatherings or parties, that there won't be much room for letting that happen again and again. We want to really impress upon them that there are consequences for failure to follow the tenets that we've set forward in the Health Pact and in our expectations for health and safety. While by necessity, a lot of regular campus activities for students will have to be remote this year, even for those students who will be here in Hyde Park, we do plan on having some limited and regulated in-person options for students to socially connect and to enjoy recreation activities. We'll be carefully monitoring the use of our facilities and the use of our spaces to make sure that students are adhering to all the regulations we need them to. But we do understand that they need to have fun. They need to be able to get out and about, explore Hyde Park, explore Chicago, and that it is okay for them to do that in small groups, making sure that they're wearing their face covering at all times and abiding by all of the things that Dr. Landon has referenced. Again, I'm so happy that our students are coming back. We've missed them. I know that they want to do the right thing, and they look forward to becoming members of the Hyde Park community. I'm now happy to introduce two of my colleagues, Courtney Davis Curtis, who is the Assistant Vice President for Risk Management and Resilience Planning, and Katie Keller-Wright, Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff in the President's Office.
Thank you, Michelle. The university, in collaboration with the expertise of UChicago Medicine, is monitoring a number of metrics related to COVID-19 processes and epidemiology. Process metrics include an assessment of supply on hand and the lead time for essential items like personal protective equipment, hand sanitizer, and surface disinfectant. We're also assessing staffing levels and managing the impact on our service levels, as well as with regards to certain functions on campus. Additionally, as Michelle mentioned, we're really looking closely at the behavior metrics to monitor adherence to the required public health protocols, such as maintaining social distancing or wearing face coverings. Monitoring the epidemiology of COVID-19 includes assessing the number of cases and positivity rates nationally in the surrounding states and locally for the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, Cook County, and our surrounding community, and at the university and the medical center. The university currently provides data on the COVID-19 cases and exposures reported to the contact tracing team. That information is available on the Go Forward website and is updated on a weekly basis, where we highlight the number of positive cases reported and the close contacts associated with those cases. In the coming weeks, the university will expand the public-facing dashboard to include information about our asymptomatic mandatory and voluntary surveillance testing programs, to share the number of tests completed, the confirmed positive cases and the positivity rates, and the numbers of individuals in isolation. I'll now turn it over to Katie Callowright, the Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Courtney. And good evening, everyone. We appreciate you all taking some time to be with us. So first, I want to reflect for a minute on some of the metrics that Courtney talked about. People often ask us, what is the trigger that will make us change course in our plans at the university? And some of the metrics that Courtney mentioned are certainly weighted more heavily than others. Test positivity rate, our testing capacity, our ability to staff critical functional areas are three good examples. On the other hand, there is not one metric that is the trigger that would cause us to make a major change in course. For example, if we were to use test positivity rate as the key metric in our decision making, we wouldn't be accounting for other factors like the spread of the virus around us in the city or in the region, high reports of non-compliance by our students, either of which might warrant some adjustment in our plans. So while there's some data points that are particularly important for us to watch on a daily basis and to discuss, it's the full picture that will inform our decision making as we move forward. Before I say something about contingencies and adjustments in plans that we certainly would consider, I do want to reinforce what Dr. Landon said about the fact that we expect that we will have students test positive upon their arrival next week when they move into the residence halls, and students who become positive during the course of the quarter, and we've been preparing for this. The ability for students to be in quarantine and stay in class remotely is one important piece of flexibility in our plan, as well as preparations to respond operationally and in terms of student support. As Michele Rasmussen noted, this includes things like moving positive students from their residence hall room immediately into isolation housing, providing food as well as supplies for them there to manage their illness if they're symptomatic, and contact with our student wellness and other staff resources during the quarantine or isolation period. As part of our planning process, we have been and will continue to run tabletop scenario planning exercises. And through consultation with our colleagues in the medical center and other planning groups, we've identified and explored various adjustment scenarios, some of which have been seen at other places, such as moving to a stay-at-home or a quarantine for an entire residence hall community, for an example, where there would be perhaps a cluster of cases. We've talked about moving to a fully remote education program for the short term or for the duration of the quarter, reducing non-academic in-person activities happening on campus, reducing the density in research labs and other working environments, changing to an all takeout dining program. These are different levers that we can pull in response to the situation that we see on the ground. Decisions of public health authorities based on what's happening in the city and the state may certainly also have an impact. For an example, if we move to an earlier stage of the recovery spectrum for Chicago or the state and can't convene as many as 50 people in one setting, we might have to reduce the number of in-person classes taking place on campus. Our provost office and our IT services group have been working to prepare for those kinds of shifts that might have to happen quickly. And I think that our community is well prepared for those kinds of adjustments, knowing that this whole situation is uncertain and may require it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Emily Hooper Lansana, who's going to talk about university arts programs and community engagement. Emily?
We are grateful for the role that the arts have played during this challenging time. Throughout the university, there have been many creative and innovative developments. This past spring and summer, we at UChicago Arts pivoted from live programming to providing a range of virtual programs. Highlights include Court Theater's Monologue Festival, UChicago Presents online concerts and discussions with artists, Theater and Performance Studies virtual dance program, Arts and Public Life Southside Home Movie Project and DJ programs, the Smart Museum's virtual object chats and video exhibition tours, the Oriental Institute's podcasts and armchair traveler series, and many of these programs are continuing. Similarly, the Logan Center and Arts and Public Life transitioned their arts education programs online. Some highlights of those include the Digital Storytelling Initiative, Think It, Make It, Screen It, Story Arts, the Design Apprenticeship Program, and the Community Actors Program. And while we often talk about what we are losing during this time of having to shift our lives for COVID, I think the arts in many ways are also giving us an opportunity to reflect on some of the things that we're gaining in terms of the opportunity to have expanded audiences, have access to programs, and the opportunity to have some of these programs available for an extended period of time. So if you missed something, if you visit the website of one of the institutions, you may have the opportunity to catch up and dig into some of the wonderful arts that are happening. This autumn, we will continue to offer a full suite of virtual programming. Representative examples include that the Oriental Institute will launch virtual tours in addition to its online K-12 and adult education courses. The Arts and Public Life, which had a planned program for supporting creative entrepreneurs, which is something that they've been doing since the beginning, has reimagined and is taking shape this program as a virtual month-long holiday arts marketplace. The Logan Center's school matinee program will be presented entirely online to allow teachers and families to integrate world-class matinee programming into their virtual curriculum. The Smart Museum and Logan Center Family Saturday programs will continue to happen online, as will Court Theater's Theater and Thought series, along with many other music programs which have been redesigned to be successful virtually, including UC Presents, Logan Center Jazz and Blues, and Arts and Public Life's transformed First Monday Jazz series. In addition, over the course of the fall, and subject to prevailing guidance from the city and state health authorities, we'll be piloting in-person exhibitions at many of the UChicago arts locations. Examples include programming at the Logan Center and Newbauer Collegium, the Take Care exhibition at the Smart, 9 Lives at the Renaissance Society, the Centennial installations by Michael Rakowitz and Mohammed Hafiz at the Oriental Institute, and the Jenny Holzer Public Art Project. As of right now, with the exception of welcoming guests to visit exhibitions with reservations, our other buildings remain closed to the public. We look forward to welcoming people back as conditions improve. Finally, we're hoping to begin piloting a program that provides resources, equipment, and limited space access for community arts partners and artists to tape virtual programming. This program will be piloted at the Logan Center over the next several weeks, with our hope to expand it over time to encompass spaces at the Smart Museum, Court Theater, Oriental Institute, Arts and Public Life, and others. We hope that if you haven't had the opportunity to take advantage of many of the wonderful arts education offerings and arts experiences, that you will do so. Thank you. And I'll transition to Derek Douglas.
Thanks, Emily. As you all can see, the university has undergone extensive planning to make sure the return to campus of our students goes smoothly, but also that our shared community stays safe. In a moment, I will share with you how some of the university's community programming will be impacted by the new guidelines, but I first want to share a few ways in which the university has pivoted to support our extended Southside community during the pandemic. We all remember in March when the pandemic swept across the nation and swept across our city, and in particular, our Southside communities were among the hardest hit. And at that time, the university, working with community partners, residents, many of the folks who are on this Zoom call tonight, worked to leverage our resources and launched several efforts across both the university and the medical center to provide emergency and later ongoing support to address some of the critical needs of local residents, businesses, and community-based nonprofits on the South Side. I'll give a few examples a little bit later. I think one of the key things to keep in mind about this program was that the way we went about it was to really adapt and build off of existing programming that the university had in place. And that's what allowed us to pivot relatively quickly to direct these new services towards the community who was facing this acute need related to COVID-19. Some of the initiatives that we launched as part of our COVID response work was the Community Support Initiative. A key element of that was our food program. We all know that food security was one of the major issues that the mayor identified as challenging families during that time, as people were losing jobs, grocery stores and places were closed. It was very hard for a lot of families to get access to food. The university initially committed to providing at least 200,000 meals to the community through June. We actually, with the support of partners and donors and others, were able to extend that program and ended up providing over 300,000 meals from March to August to residents on the south side of Chicago, partnering with the Greater Chicago Food Depository. We also work with 6 local minority and women caterers, and we used 45 different distribution sites across the 9 neighborhood focus area of the University of Chicago, essentially the entire Mid-South Side. One example was the YWCA, which partnered with us to distribute 5,000 meals at a single site in Woodlawn. So that was critical support, that we were able to repurpose our dining infrastructure for students, and they were not here, to provide these meals to the community. In addition, there was a heavy emphasis in supporting the small businesses. We all know that businesses, particularly at the beginning, but even now, are really struggling to stay afloat. But when there was a shutdown or a stay-at-home order, they effectively had no business for a couple of months at all. So the university launched, using our UChicago local program in partnership with the Polsky Exchange Center, and as well as our commercial real estate office, a program to provide grants, bridge grants, to over 200 Southside small businesses. The grants were intended to bridge because we knew that the city, we knew that the state, we knew that the federal government was going to be mobilizing resources to support businesses, but those things take time. And for a lot of our businesses on the South Side, they didn't have the luxury of time. So this program, we offered $840,000 in grants, again, to over 200 businesses, which helped them sustain and bridge to those additional resources that were coming online. One example of a business that we were able to help was the Brown Sugar Bakery in Greater Grand Crossing. They had shut down early in the pandemic due to lack of business, but they used the grant that we gave them to pay their employees to reconfigure their website, which allowed them to move to an online platform for orders and curbside pickup. That helped them sustain, and they reopened in time for Mother's Day. So that was one example of the type of support that these grants were able to provide. In addition, we know that a lot of our community-based nonprofit organizations, in many ways, they're the lifeblood of our neighborhoods. They're the ones providing those critical social services to community members who often don't have other options for how they would get these services. So as part of our community support initiative, the university provided $400,000 in grants to 79 Southside nonprofits through our Community Programs Accelerator program. An example of there was the Hyde Park Neighborhood Club. They typically provide childcare and after-school programming. That's one of the main functions of their nonprofit and their business. But obviously, due to COVID, no one could come in. So through our grant, they were able to pivot to providing care for essential workers' kids who still had to go to work. And then they also used it to buy laptops and tablets to shift other programming virtually and to provide technology to some of the families that they served who didn't have access to technology. In addition to the community support initiative, we also launched a program through our admissions office and our career advancement office called UChicago Stand Together. That program was launched to build on the university's work to help Chicago students gain admission to and pay for and thrive in college, and not just at the University of Chicago, but to colleges across the country. The initiative offers specialized help for students from Chicago public schools and area charter schools as they navigate the college search and application process, which they had to do virtually as a result of COVID. They weren't able to walk into college counselors. A lot of folks, they couldn't do college tours. A lot of those supports that they typically had access to disappeared because of the COVID situation. And UChicago Stand Together was set up to fill that void. It also supports community-based organizations with expertise in assisting students on the path to college, and they form critical partnerships. One of the ones that is critical to UChicago Stand Together is the partnership with 100 Black Men that we utilize to provide these critical college supports to CPS kids who don't have these other options. In addition, a lot of our community programs during COVID, we had to shift to virtual formats like our Community Programs Accelerator I referenced before, also our tutoring program like Maroon Tutor Match, which provides one-on-one tutoring for young people. That went virtual. The Polsky Center was closed, still is closed actually. And so they, through virtual means, provided support to over 1,000 small businesses through the Small Business Boot Camp, served 21 companies through their Small Business Growth Program, and provided over 7,000 hours of personalized services. So even though we've got into this COVID, we're in the middle still of this COVID pandemic, the university has found ways to pivot our work to try to continue to meet the needs of people on the south side of Chicago and in the community. And we're going to continue this effort as we go forward. One thing I did want to note was that because of the new protocols and the new restrictions and the limitations that we're having to put in place to keep people safe, we are going to be encouraging and are encouraging all of our community-based programs to continue to serve in a remote capacity through the end of the year to the extent possible. That doesn't mean there will be no interaction. You heard about some of the plans from the arts, and there will be some others, but by and large, we'll be looking to use virtual and remote platforms to continue our community programs. In addition, we're looking right now at some of the other impacts that the university's new working situation and protocols will have on the community in terms of access to campus, in terms of information about where people can get some of the health supports and testing and those sorts of things. And we will be sharing that information and communicating it regularly on our website. We also are going to continue our work around supporting partners with local jobs and local purchasing through our UChicago local program, because we know and have heard from a lot of the businesses that are still very concerned about this second potential wave, flu and all that, and how that will interact with their livelihood. So we're going to do our best to keep people informed. Tonight was about letting you know the plans that we have in place, both for on campus and for off campus, but we're going to continue to use forums like this, speak at local ward meetings, host sessions. We're going to post things on our website, social media challenges, use all channels, use all the available means to share information, because making sure people are informed and we're transparent about our plans, I think, is one of the most important things we can do to help us all navigate this pandemic together. I'm going to get to the questions in a second, but I did want to say that there will be a variety of upcoming opportunities for residents to tap into our program, some of the ones I mentioned tonight, and to stay informed about those opportunities. And so to do that, the best way to do it is to subscribe to our Civic Engagement newsletter. You can sign up by clicking the Join Our Mailing List link by visiting our website, civicengagement.uchicago.edu. So with that, I would ask all of our speakers to turn on their cameras and unmute. We have a little bit of time to address some of the questions that came in from the community. So let me start with this question that I'll direct to Michele. And we actually got a question in the chat that was along these lines. The question is, these are questions, I should say, that came to us before. When we sent it out, people sent in questions before, so we could ask them tonight. So one question was, we're very worried about university oversight of students off campus. Fraternity parties, other student parties, drinking, crowds, not following social gathering. They're a problem in normal years. What will you do this year to provide oversight of students off campus?
That's a great question, one that we've been giving a lot of thought to, and we have begun in my area to start engaging students actively around how important it is for them to modify their behavior and also hold each other accountable. We've developed a system whereby we're encouraging any member of our community on or off campus to report anything that they feel is unhealthy or unsafe. On campus, this reporting system has been used to deal with on-campus safety issues, but really anyone who can access a computer can file a report. It's called the UCare system, and if you visit the Go Forward website, which is where we're putting all of the university's COVID-related information, you can find there the link to the UCare reporting form. Why I want to point this out is that we're really trying to affect the culture on campus, that if students are unhappy or unsure about what their peers are doing, we want them to let us know so that we can promptly address the question and the issue, whether it be on campus or off campus. We've also, as I said, engaged students actively around this, including some of the members of our off-campus communal housing groups, let them know what our expectations are for their behavior. I'm pleased to report that they get it, and I believe that they'll be good partners to us. But they also understand that we can't afford to let behaviors go unchecked if they're going to pose a risk to our community. We are willing and able to employ various tools to make sure students comply with what we expect of them with respect to COVID-19 safety precautions. If we do need to refer a student to one of our disciplinary systems, we will do that. We hope we don't have to do that, but we will do it if we need to.
Thank you. One follow-up, Michele, and you may have touched on this in your presentation, but a question came in: will off-campus students coming from out of state be informed of city and state quarantine requirements?
Absolutely. We know which students are coming from which states. They need to go into a 14-day quarantine if they are living in any of our residence halls. They come from one of the states currently on the City of Chicago's executive travel order list. For all other students who are living off campus, coming from anywhere around the country or around the world, we are strongly recommending that they abide by a stay-at-home period or a quarantine period, depending on where they're coming from. We're also requiring every student off campus to report to us if they test positive for COVID-19. That way we can make sure that they are receiving the medical attention they need, that they know exactly what they need to do for the subsequent period of isolation or quarantine. So we're going to hold students to that standard very strictly, regardless of whether they're living on or off campus.
Thank you. Katie, one question to you that relates to off campus, because a lot of students, or a number of them, live in housing off campus, as was noted tonight. Is the university coordinating with some of the major landlords or in conversation with them and about what they're doing around this issue?
Sure. So our Office of Commercial Real Estate has an ongoing open line of communication with our major landlords in the Hyde Park, Woodlawn, Kenwood area. And they were in close touch this summer when we knew that we needed to reduce the density of our housing population and that there would potentially be more students living in the neighborhood. It doesn't appear that there are actually that many more than there would have otherwise been, because some number of students are actually staying fully remote, either in their home countries or in other U.S. cities. But we did coordinate closely with the landlords to let them know what our plan was. We got information about their COVID-related measures and cleaning regimen, things like that. We occasionally receive concerns about things happening in buildings where either somebody another resident or a staff person isn't following COVID measures, and so our commercial real estate office will follow up. And sort of conversely, we expect that through that office, in addition to the UCare system that Michele talked about, we may get reports from landlords or from other residents about student behavior. And so we will certainly follow up on those in the same way that we would follow up on new care reports.
Great, thank you. Emily, a question for you that came in was, and I'll have a follow-up question after this, but you talked about mandatory testing. We also talked about a voluntary testing program. The question was, why is there only mandatory testing for students living in dorms? Why not all students?
So testing is a really tricky issue, and it's important to know that there's good evidence for testing people regularly when they live in what's called congregate housing, where they share bathroom or kitchen facilities. Now, we know most of the people living off campus are living, actually almost everyone, is living in a residence, like an apartment, and they may be sharing with other people. But this is not terribly different than our families that live in homes like this all the time. And there's not been any comprehensive testing program necessary to reduce COVID in those situations in any country, and including ours. We've done very well in Hyde Park and in the surrounding South Side community. By the way, I'm sorry, other South Siders, if I left you out of my comments earlier, I didn't mean to. But the reality is that testing people regularly is kind of a double-edged sword. Most of the people will be negative most of the time. And sometimes a negative test really can give people we know this from other kinds of diseases and other kinds of testing, that it sort of gives people a sense of security that they may not need to have. And there's definitely a downside to testing every single person every single day and keeping track, or every single week, and keeping track of that. So we are instead doing this voluntary testing program where a number of people, not just students though, also faculty, also staff, will participate in a sentinel surveillance program, the ones who would like to do so. And that will give us a good idea of what's really happening and if we're missing things. Obviously, if we need to change our position and change our approach, we'll do it. And if we start seeing things like parties off campus and other large gatherings off campus, you can absolutely bet that those students are all going to get tested after that and probably have to spend some time in quarantine because of the risk involved of those kinds of activities. So know that we have mitigation efforts in place, but we also know that testing is not the only thing that we can do to prevent COVID. In fact, it doesn't actually prevent that many cases. You have to test positive and already have exposed people in order for our contact tracing to do its job to prevent the third set of cases. So it's really important that we learn as we go, and everyone in the community is welcome to be tested if they have symptoms of COVID or if they've been exposed to COVID. Through the University of Chicago's testing program, you can contact us, and we have a really quick turnaround and really good testing. They're very nice to you there. I've been tested too, so I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Emily. And it's good to remind people that the medical center did set up 10 different testing sites in the community. So folks can go to get tests if they're feeling symptomatic. Just a quick follow-up. There has been some talk in the news about a second wave, the flu combined with COVID. What will that mean for communities? Do you have, say, what your 2 or 3 top tips for people if they want to stay safe, if they're worried about a second wave, that they should be thinking about in terms of their own safety and behavior?
First of all the things that we do to prevent COVID also prevent influenza. And hopefully if we are all following those things, like I know we are in Chicago, then we are going to see a low flu season this year like we saw in the Southern Hemisphere, is what I hope is the case. That said, get your flu shot, because nothing will be more confusing than having flu-like symptoms in the middle of the flu/COVID season and not knowing which it is. And that can be pretty scary. So definitely get your flu shot. Other than that, the 3 W's are the way to go. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance. 6 feet apart means that you and the other person can completely extend your arms and not touch each other's fingers. That's a good measure to know that you are about 6 feet apart. And so a lot of us tend to think that 6 feet is a little bit less than that, but it's not. And the last piece is to remember, inside, it's not masks or distance, it's masks and distance when you need to be inside. So as we're going inside for the winter and things cool off outside, please remember masks and distance. Don't skimp, we need the layers. they protect us.
Thank you, Emily. There was a question here, I'll put this one to Michele, about how will UChicago handle quarantining its students? And will it ensure good living conditions and nutritious meals 3 times a day? I would like 3 times a day.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
That's a good
So
life.
for our residential students, if they are exposed or they're considered to be a close contact of another student who tests positive, we will require them to quarantine in their residence hall dorm room by themselves for the requisite period of time, which my understanding is 14 days. And those students will have all of their meals delivered to their door. Any care packages that mom and dad send from home will get delivered to their door. And they'll be able to continue their classes because all of our classes have been set up in such a way that they can switch to remote if they need to. So we're pretty confident we'll be able to keep those students safe and sound and well fed and well looked after. For our off-campus students who need to quarantine, we obviously won't be able to do food deliveries to all of them from campus, but we will be working very closely with their dean of students at the university to figure out what is the best way to support them during their off-campus quarantine period. Some of them may be pretty self-sufficient and don't need much from us, but others may need a little bit more. And we're fully prepared to tailor our response and our support systems to meet that need. We are committed to making sure that students have access at all times to our Student Wellness Center. We have a very robust telehealth system set up, so most students' medical issues can be dealt with over the phone or over Zoom with a physician or a nurse or other clinical provider. If a student during their quarantine period begins to feel symptomatic and begins to feel that things aren't going well and maybe they do in fact have COVID, our wellness center will swing into action, make sure that they get tested and get the medical attention they need so we know how to handle that. The key thing will be communication, and we really will impress upon our students the importance to reach out if they're off campus and let us know if they think they've been exposed or they're worried about having it exposed or if they need anything while they're in quarantine.
Thank you, Michele. We have time for, I'm going to do 2 more questions. The first one is for Kai. And I think Katie kind of referenced this, but I want us to just be clear because it came through the community. And then the last one will be for Emily, an arts-related question, a couple of questions in arts. So the first one is, does the university have benchmarks or a threshold number of cases for deciding whether winter quarter courses may also be conducted remotely? Essentially, should we anticipate that the entire school year will be almost remote?
So we have been planning for the fall quarter exclusively, and we will be pivoting to look at the winter and spring quarter, as well as for the rest of the academic calendar very soon. The guiding principle remains the same. We would be looking into preparing for the winter quarter in the spirit of how we have been looking and preparing for the fall quarter, namely that we would have plan on a hybrid model that we're having, have both in-person as well as remote experience. And we would be really following the trend of how the pandemic is going to make the final decision as to which way the education will be delivered.
Thank you. And Emily, there was a few questions related to arts. The question was, how can community arts partners express their interest in getting involved in the stream products and programming that you all will be doing at the Logan Center? And there were also questions about, if they do get involved, are there rules around capacity, or do they have to take tests before they can come on? That sort of thing. So it might be Emily, and then Katie, you might have to speak to a little bit of, are they required to take testing or attestate? What is the requirement? Go ahead, Emily. First, how do you, if they want to get access, how do they do that?
Initially, we have every year a community partner application process where community cultural organizations who are interested in partnering with the Logan Center to use space apply. And we had over 40 partners that were accepted and we needed to shift or reschedule almost all of that programming. So the first precedent will be giving to trying to reschedule those programs that were rescheduled. If there are other partners who are interested, it would be best to contact myself or Michele Hardy, who is the Associate Director of Partnerships and Strategy. And for everyone who is entering the art spaces, there are university safety protocols that will be required.
Okay, that's right, Kate. Okay, so Emily got it. So we're at our 7 o'clock time, so I'm gonna wrap it up. And I wanna first thank everyone again for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you all taking the time. Again, we know not everybody who would benefit from this information was able to get it. And so we're gonna be making it available. We're gonna be posting this recording on Monday on the goforward.uchicago.edu site / it's goforward.uchicago.edu/community-planning. And in addition to this presentation, there are other presentations that have been made on some of the university's protocols and policies and things that we're doing around COVID-19 and bringing people back to campus, all of which you can get access to on the goforward.uchicago.edu site. If you're interested in information around our community programs and accessing those, you go to the Civic engagement.uchicago.edu site, and you can get all that information there. Again, we thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you as partners, and we look forward to working with you all collaboratively in the days ahead. Thank you.